While I know we are all waiting this big ticket free agent that the Sixers will be building around, there's some more noise around the edges for a player that they may be interested in, and I want to break down why that is an intriguing name to be thrown out there, and why Kentavious Caldwell-Pope could be the baby step to the Sixers reaching their championship aspirations. Now I want to start out with, this has been a bit of a swirling rumor throughout the offseason. This is not the first time that we've heard Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's name mentioned, but the latest report that we have here from Evan Sidri says Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's value in free agency is expected to reach near $25 million annually. The Sixers and Magic loom as serious contenders to offer Caldwell-Pope a short-term deal at a large salary. KCP will soon decline his $15.4 million player option with the Nuggets. So we know this is kind of expected to be the case, and we also got an indication from the Nuggets themselves that during his meeting with the press, that GM Calvin Booth talked about retaining Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and said, quote, "When you look at good teams in the past, they had to find ways to replace 4th, 5th starters." So yeah, pretty much Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is out the door in Denver and is a guy who will be on the open market. Now we know who Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is as a player at this point. He's got 2 championship rings on his finger, one with the Nuggets, one with the Lakers, and is a guy that is very much conducive to winning teams, that he is a high-level play his role at a championship level type guy. And to dive into his stats, it's not stuff that's going to blow you off the page here. We're talking about this season, him averaging 10.1 points per game, 2.4 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 40.6% three-point shooter, also shot 42.6% at the corner. He's very much a catch-and-shoot guy, but a guy that can still defend at a pretty high level. 1.3 steals per game. He is 6'5", 31 years old. 94.4% of his shots are assisted, and 52.5% of his shots are coming from beyond the three-point arc in general. That he is one of the true 3&D type archetype of players, and he's a little more than that. That he's a pretty good connective passer, just has really good basketball IQ and feel for the game overall. We know that he has 2 rings on his finger. As I said, there is reason for the correlation there. Now, the bigger picture conversation here is this may be a little bit of the Sixers saying, we can't get our big ticket free agent. This is a little bit of a half step. And while there are smaller salary figures, if we're not talking about the Paul George, that maybe there's a world where it's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope via free agency and Brandon Ingram via trade. I've heard a lot of that being connected, so I could definitely see that being the case. But I want to start with the logic behind the Siakam trade. So this trade came a couple weeks ago. This is written on Heavy Sports here, and it says, before Scotto's report, Yahoo Sports' Jake Fisher reported that the Philadelphia 76ers could look into adding Caldwell-Pope. As Scotto reported, they may sign him a deal similar to Brown's. Quote, the Sixers sources said, took note of Indiana's 2-year splurge for Bruce Brown that then became the biggest salary headed back to Toronto in exchange for Siakam. Veteran wings like Klay Thompson and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would fall on the Sixers list of targets for similar 1+1 contracts, Fisher wrote in a May 23rd story. Now, a couple things here. I get the mention of Klay Thompson as well. I'll say by my eyes, I think Klay is a little bit more cooked than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is at this point. And while at his peak, there's no doubt that Klay Thompson has been the better player, he just doesn't quite look the same. And I'm not saying I'm entirely out on Klay Thompson, as I do think he could be rejuvenated by a new system that isn't as motion-centric as the Warriors run and playing off, dump it in the post to Joel Embiid. If the defender doubles, a kick out to Klay Thompson for 3 could look quite special. But I do think if you're looking at a complete basketball player at this point in each of their careers, the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has a little bit more left in the tank. Now, that article referenced that Bruce Brown trade to Indiana quite heavily there. So to acknowledge the full thought process behind that, let's flash back to last offseason. So the Indiana Pacers beginning to get on the standpoint where they're focused on winning. And we saw them take those strides forward this year, that they obviously won the second round, knocked out the New York Knicks, looked very much exceeded all goals and expectations for this year. But when you think about how they got there, it started last offseason when them overpaying for Bruce Brown, for giving him a $20 million contract with a $25 million player option, which the Raptors currently have and are accepting with the hopes of flipping Bruce Brown to a contender. And to dive into who Bruce Brown is, not much different than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. 10.8 points per game this season, 4.2 rebounds, 2.9 assists, is a guy who shot 47.8% from the field and just 32.3% from 3, 34.4% from the corner. In fact, he's a much worse shooter than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He is a little bit better of a playmaker, even if the numbers don't indicate it by that, and probably a slightly better defender, although I think KCP right in the same range as him, so I might even retract that a little bit there. But the point being that Bruce Brown was coming off a championship year as well. the Pacers went out and paid him, started to bring a little bit of that culture in, and then ultimately the opportunity presented itself that Pascal Siakam jumped on the trade block there. And for the Pacers, that I've talked about this a lot on this channel here, is a lot of the actual trades being done have far more to do with money than it does have to do with the actual player's talent. That you have to find a way to do your dance around the CBA and make sure that the money is matching to get it done. And ultimately, what that trade turned out to be is it was Bruce Brown, Kyra Lewis, Jordan Nwora, 2 first-round picks, a conditional first-round pick in exchange for Pascal Siakam and a future second. Without paying Bruce Brown that hefty sum of cash in the range of the 20 to 25 mil, which is being indicated for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, that trade does not even happen. So if you are the Sixers right here, maybe you are speaking about, let's bring Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in. At the worst, this is a guy that can help this team, that he can still play basketball that is conducive to winning, that fits around Joel Embiid. And the best case scenario, potentially, is a star being available that he becomes a significant piece of the puzzle for a trade standpoint. Like, what if we just got the report last night that Jimmy Butler is not reaching an extension with the Bulls and will enter the final year of his contract, although he does have a player option next year, and then look to renegotiate. Maybe they get halfway through the season and things aren't going well for Jimmy down in South Beach, and all of a sudden he's back to his ways of turning up a ruckus, wanting to force his way out of there. Then you can use KCP as the primary trade piece to make that deal, bring Jimmy, and then all of a sudden, maybe we're talking about a parade on Broad Street and a little bit more likely light there. Now, this is all obviously a pipe dream, and a lot of things have to play themselves out. But the point being is the Sixers want to put themselves in a position where you have the type of assets to be the first to marketplace when a deal is on the table, to get the next Mikal Bridges or the next Lauri Markkanen or the next Kevin Durant or whoever that name may be. There's constantly another one coming at the NBA. Donovan Mitchell even could be a name in that conversation. And I also think we can learn a little bit from the Sixers at this point of what is the style of roster they're looking to build. I actually think the Jared McCain pick was pretty telling with that, and I think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Klay Thompson are each guys that fit the same mold. So when you look around the NBA, it's a wing-dominated league at this point. That we're seeing the Jaylen Browns and Jason Tatums. And we look at the New York Knicks, and they're leaning into the OG Anunobys and Mikal Bridges. We know all about the LeBron James success, the Kevin Durant's. It's very clear that this is the style of player that has been so dominant. Now, the Sixers are constructed around a big man, and they are Joel Embiid, to his credit, and Nikola Jokic in the same exact category, is such an elite talent that is still worth building around. But you have to find ways to combat these wing-oriented teams. And what the Sixers are doing are very clearly leaning into, we're going to shoot you off the floor. That Tyrese Maxey, an elite shooter. Jared McCain, a phenomenal shooter. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a very good shooter. 40.6% from three, 42.6% from the corner. And by the way, he's been doing this for the length of his career. That if we want to dive into his stats as a whole, that throughout the length of his career, 36.9% from three overall, 4.6 three-point attempts per game, which is nice volume, but he's been much better in the later part of his career. We're talking about him as a rookie, just 31.9%, just 30.9% in his third season there. He's been much better of late. We're talking about 40.6% last year, 42.3% the year before, 39% the year prior, 41% before. You can see that at this stage of his career, he has turned himself into quite a high-level shooter. And I think that's the predicament and the challenge that the Sixers are going to attempt to put teams in. That we're going to space the floor. We're going to give Joel Embiid his touches, his opportunity to go one-on-one. And if you dare double team him, we're punishing you with an open three. We're going to have 4 other guys on the floor that can just knock down three-pointers. I do think there is value that. I do think there is a way where that absolutely works. Now, obviously, basketball is not won by just one characteristic, so there is much more work to be done. But I do think we're starting to see a little bit of the blueprint for the direction the Sixers are leaning in. So for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, this would be a move that I welcome to the Sixers. It is not the move. It is not the one that catches them up to other teams, but that's not going to happen in one thing. Celebrate the singles, the doubles, that you're not going to walk up to the plate and hit a home run on every single at-bat, and I think that's the approach that Daryl Morey is taking. They took a stride forward by adding Jared McCain. They could take another stride forward by adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and there is much more work to be done around the edges as well, but it is exciting to start to see a little bit of the blueprint. Again, plenty more work to do at this point in time. The Sixers still have a lot bigger questions than just adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but don't be too frustrated with the process to get there. That each of these things are still steps to success and should be acknowledged as such. So I would sign up for a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope addition. I think that could be a great fit on the Sixers team and a guy that could work out either on the court or as a trade chip. And Daryl Morey seems very committed to bringing in this level of flexibility. So let me know if you guys are with me in the comments. Would you be into Kentavious Caldwell-Pope? And for anybody worried about the amount of money, it ain't ours to spend, so I'm not that worried about that. I more look at it as a salary cap perspective, and I think that is the proper approach. That as much as these are crazy figures of money to wrap our heads around, just look at it as like if this were a set number, you have what the salary cap set at. Just think about the percentage of where it's distributed. Look at it in that light, and I view it a little bit more positively, and that's why I can live with giving that amount of cash to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope right there. So let me know if you guys are with me in the comments. Make sure you're dropping a like on this video and subscribing to the channel if you have not. Got a ton of great content to break down. I am recording this before the second round of the NBA draft, but we'll have some videos ripping after to be scheduled out throughout the weekend. So make sure you guys are tapped in for all of that, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.